Good morning, everyone. We're here this morning to hear an update from the commissioners. We are excited to have you with us. The meeting is being held in listen-only mode, so you have video capability, and we're also recording this. If you have questions as we move along, you can, this morning, if it would be best if we could enter those into the chat panel, and we'll get to those questions as time allows. As I said, we're recording the meeting, and it will be found on our webinars page, so you can view it later. Go through our sponsors very quickly. We want to thank Hammond Lumber as being our presenting sponsor this morning. Our supporting sponsors are AARP, AmeriHealth Caritas, Eaton Peabody, Enbridge, First Light, Kennebec Savings, Delta Dental, and Sun Life. And we'll have a very short presentation from Hammond Lumber.
Hammond Lumber Company is a fourth-generation family-owned and operated business. Founded in 1953, Hammond Lumber has steadily grown into Maine's largest independent lumber and building material supplier. We want to thank you for supporting our family business this past year and every year. We feel privileged to have again served the needs of our communities from all of our 22 locations across Maine and New Hampshire. The Hammond team is made up of over 900 dedicated employees. When you're ready to tackle your next building project, no matter how big or small, depend on Hammond Lumber Company for the products and services you need. Whether you're a contractor, homeowner, or do-it-yourselfer, Hammond Lumber will see your project through from start to finish. The knowledgeable staff at Hammond Lumber will be with you every step of the way and keep your project on schedule. From free estimating and planning, to design and drafting services, and a wide variety of building and remodeling products, including complete home and garage packages, Hammond Lumber, the 2020 Pro Sales Dealer of the Year, is proud to be your building project partner. From our family to yours, we wish you success and good health as we move through the new year. Learn more at hammondlumber.com. or stop by the Hammond location nearest you. Thank you from everyone at Hammond Lumber Company, proud to be one of the best places to work in Maine.
All right, now I'll turn it over to Dana Connors.
Yeah, thank you, Angie, and certainly good morning to every single one of you out there today. We deeply appreciate this. Is a challenging day for many of us, even though we're accustomed to it in Maine. Every storm seems to be a little bit different, and that is certainly the case here today. I do not envy you, Commissioner Van Noot, with the many challenges that you face, at least this morning, but knowing the department as I do, you'll be up to the test. I am sure of that. This is a very special program for us, as we're very proud to be able to present some of our commissioners and administrative leaders that we are so proud to present. And actually, as Angie mentioned at the outset, it's an update for them. It's really what lies ahead in their respective departments for priorities, for maybe projects, initiatives, even a challenge that they may face. So certainly we welcome them. A special thank you goes out to each of them. And before I introduce them, I wanted to make the following comment, because it's something that I've seen in my time with a number of governors that I've had the opportunity to work with or for. And that is that it's pretty obvious perhaps, but each governor, as they set forth their agenda for meeting the needs of Maine, whether that's to improve the lives and the livelihood of each and every one of our people in the state, or to grow our economy, they seek out the very best professionals to carry out the mission of his or her administration. Those are the people with the right attitude, the skill, the experience, and the commitment that it takes to serve in their respective capacity. Well, I can honestly say that the cabinet of Governor Mills represents all of those qualities and even more. So it's a pleasure for me to be able to present to you this morning. the following. We begin actually with Commissioner Jean Lambrou, who is a Commissioner of Department of Health and Human Services. That's going to be followed by Commissioner Heather Johnson in the Department of Economic and Community Development. Both are with us this morning. Both have to leave before the conclusion of the program, probably following their presentation. So if any of you have a question for those two, we'll try to get it in at the very outset. Commissioner Johnson will be followed by Commissioner of Transportation, Bruce Van Note. And then it'll be the leader of our Innovation Office of Policy and Innovation, Our Future, and a whole lot of studies that have been done under her reign, Hannah Pingree. And Bill Harwood, the Office of Public Advocate, will make the final presentation unless Commissioner Laura Fortman, who has an appointment, hopes to be able to join us before the program is concluded. That's the array that you'll have in the next hour, and I'm very pleased to both welcome them, but also to have them on the program today and to thank them for their service. So with it, Commissioner Lambrou, we would ask you to begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am grateful to be here today. And I will again apologize for having to leave on the early side. I'll try to answer some of the questions in the chat before I hop off. But again, I'm Jean Lambrou, Commissioner of Health and Human Services. Our department here is one of the biggest in state government. We have about 3,400 workers in our department who have offices across the state from Fort Kent down to Sanford. We have 10 divisions within our department. So you'll hear from us in different capacities. For example, our Maine CDC runs a health inspection program that does visit our restaurants, our pools, and different sites. We run the health insurance marketplace for Maine, CoverMe.gov, which is a platform where people can get private health insurance with federal financial assistance. We run 2 psychiatric hospitals. We manage our MaineCare program, one of the biggest payers of healthcare in the state, and we run a bunch of different health and human services programs, which we'll talk about. So we're big, we're complicated, and we also serve a lot of people. When you look at what do we do, who do we serve, about 1 in 3 Maine residents will receive services from our departments. The biggest is our MaineCare division, where we're nearly 400,000 people at this time. We also provide food supplement payments to about 170,000 people, the Women, Infants, and Children program, et cetera. So we are a department that really does touch all different aspects of people's lives. We really try to keep our goals at the forefront. What are we trying to achieve? And the 3 main outcomes are promoting health, promoting safety, promoting resilience, and promoting opportunity. And that's 4, not 3 actually, of the outcomes that we're trying to support. And that is done for young children, for adults to make sure that they have independence and opportunity, as well as for our older residents. And I'm so grateful to be here with some of my colleagues across state government. Dana mentioned it, and I'll just underscore, we work collaboratively on so many of the important priorities. That ranges from the Children's Cabinet, which really tries to make sure our children are able to enter kindergarten prepared to succeed, as well as our youth, making sure that when they are transitioning to adulthood, they're connected to a job or connected to education. We just kicked off the Cabinet on Aging, where we'll be looking across our different programs across the private sector to see how do we make Maine an age-friendly state, a great place to retire, a great place to live for older residents, as well as tackling some of our more serious problems like the opioid and substance use disorder challenges facing our state. Hannah will talk a little later about the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, but I will just say, you look across the board, workforce, transportation, housing, food security, energy costs, as well as issues like PFAS. We do work collaboratively in this cabinet as a means to try to, serve the Maine residents that are the ones who, basically support state government. So I'll just talk about a few of our examples of progress to date, as well as a few of our priorities. So in the first 4 years, we did obviously have to deal with the pandemic, something that you don't plan for easily. You certainly have to adapt as it goes. And we did, in terms of our performance, both from the Commonwealth Fund as well as the National Bureau of Economic Research, rank high. And these are independent experts who say that the work we did, and I say that word we, not just state government, all of the private actors that we're talking to today, we all rolled up our sleeves to try to figure out how do we balance out public health with our economic health, making sure our kids are getting educated, making sure our mental health was strong during the pandemic. Clearly, it was a challenge, and there was a lot of suffering and, consequences of the pandemic. But through it all, we are so grateful for the partnership of so many who helped us get through it. We also, on the health coverage front, experienced the largest drop in the uninsured rate in the nation between 2019 and 2021. We've begun to tackle health disparities. We were ranked by a bunch of different independent people as having the worst disparities for racial and ethnic groups in the early part of the pandemic. We rolled up our sleeves, tried, failed, tried again, supported our community-based organizations, and we ended up the pandemic with one of the better outcomes, for example, in terms of vaccination rates. We continue that work with our Office of Population Health Equity, removing barriers for people, including some of our asylum seekers. Training is an important part of our department. We try to ensure that our Aspire program is looking at whole families, making sure that parents have support for childcare. If they have older relatives they're caring for, we try to make sure that they have the support they need to get training, to get their education so they really can succeed. And our HOPE program, which we launched, has helped nearly 200 people get some sort of degree or credentials, which is giving them a pathway towards higher opportunity. And on the childcare front, we know how important childcare is to all of our businesses, our workers, our families, our communities. So we're proud of the fact that we are a little bit above where we were pre-pandemic in terms of childcare slots. We are working with Maine Jobs and Recovery programs to try to build more childcare. So we will continue that work into the next 4 years, but we feel good about what we've done so far. I'll just talk about the work in progress, what's on the horizon. So we clearly prioritize child safety. There's just nothing more important for this department, for this state, than to make sure our children are safe from neglect and abuse. So we will continue to expand our capacity. We've done a fair amount to date. We have more to do. We also recognize that pre-pandemic, we had challenges with our behavioral health system. Anything from a community-based mental health program to residential substance use disorder treatment to ensuring that we have the crisis services in place. We have made significant improvements. We have expanded our hospital capacity. We have done some pilots, including this crisis center living room model in Portland that we're trialing, to making significant investments. We're so grateful to the Maine State Legislature for investing $230 million in the previous biennium alone. But we have more work to do. So that is certainly on our short-term as well as long-term horizon. And part of that is being done by trying to improve how the Medicaid or Maine Care program pays our providers. We know we need to move towards a predictable, evidence-based, and sound way of ensuring that those on the front lines caring for our residents are getting the kind of support that they need. So that is work that is ongoing. We have been implementing an award-winning law to really improve those rates, and that is something you'll hear a lot about in the upcoming budgets. But also going back to this issue of aging, we have the highest percentage of residents in the nation who are 65 and older. We consider that an asset. We consider that a benefit. We need to work, though, to make sure through this Cabinet on Aging and other programs, we are supporting those residents in having sustainable living and community connection so they really can work towards having a really wonderful end of their lives, as well as supporting those individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. We have made progress. We have seen increases in our services every year, even during the pandemic, but we have significantly more to do. We're working on a program called the Lifespan Waiver, trying to create a plan for that individual when they're 14 or 15 that will adapt over time. The services will dial up and dial down to their needs, so people don't have to apply to a complex array of programs to make sure that that individual and their family have the supports that they need from the department throughout their lives. So those are some examples of the work on the horizon. There's certainly a lot more. We look forward to engaging with the legislature to hear their priorities for the department. But I will just end by saying we are so grateful to have the kind of partnerships that we need to be able to advance our services. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner, for being with us. I know you have to leave, and while we usually wait to the very end, as I mentioned earlier, to take questions, if anyone out there has a burning question for the Commissioner before she leaves, want to make sure that we accommodate that. Or if you come up with one during the time that we have in the rest of the program, we'll be sure to get it to her. So, Mark or Angie, is there anything in the chat room that would represent a question or a comment?
There is not, Dana.
Thank you. Well, I thank you again. I appreciate very much because of your schedule and the tight schedule that you face to be with us today is deeply appreciated. So thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you at Leadership Summit, by the way. Thanks. I want to turn now to the Department of Economic and Community Development. Heather Johnson is with us. Heather, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And what are your priorities or issues that you see coming up?
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be back again this year. I think there are two kind of key things that I tend to look at as we start these conversations to set the framework for where our priorities lie. I think they create a good baseline. The first one is the strategic plan. You all are probably tired of hearing me talk about the strategic plan, but I'm going to stay on that because I think it's a roadmap that is really helpful and clear for us all to use as guideposts as we continue to work together. In that strategic plan, workforce and innovation are really the two key pillars. And we've seen a lot of progress there. But my guess is most of you spend a lot of your day in workforce particularly, but also really thinking about how do we grow our economy? How do we innovate in industries to keep them relevant and growing? And so we'll continue to stay focused there. I'm going to touch a little bit on workforce in a couple of minutes if Commissioner Fortman doesn't join before I'm done, because I'm pretty sure everybody wants to talk about workforce. So she and I, as Commissioner Lambert talked about, we'll work pretty closely together, and Commissioner Fortman obviously and I work pretty closely on workforce. So I'll spend just a little bit of time in her lane if she doesn't join to make sure that we talk that through a little bit. But just as a quick start and stage setting, if you look at kind of where we are, Maine's GDP grew by 10% between the first quarter of 2019 and the third quarter of 2022, which is the ninth fastest in the nation over that time period, and really exceeded cumulative growth of the preceding 15 years, which is pretty considerable growth that Maine hasn't seen before. A lot of that are businesses in Maine and nonprofits in Maine able to adjust and accommodate to kind of global needs and global solutions. As we look at kind of the intersection of our heritage industries and global solution needs, we were able, businesses and nonprofits and communities with their support, were able to kind of plug in there and really see resilient growth. Wages are also up. We're particularly seeing wage growth in the entry level roles, and in most of the wage bands are exceeding inflation. Certainly, inflation is consuming most of that wage growth, and so I think consumer confidence and what you would expect to feel with significant wage growth, we don't see that yet. But again, it is there. It is helping to offset some of these increases that consumers are seeing every day. So those pieces I think are positive. As you look at kind of our focus areas, one of them is how do we make sure that we can continue to grow our economy? Like, what are the tools? And workforce is probably one of the first and largest one. Post-pandemic, we had recovered all of our roles. We certainly see seasonality, as we always do, in the number of people in our workforce. What I will say is our economy grew pretty dramatically. So even though there were the same number of people back at work at times post-pandemic, that growth has really created more demand on workforce and the need for additional workforce. So there are a handful of things that we are working on. And again, if Commissioner Fortman joins, she'll talk more, but in partnership, the governor and the legislature in partnership has made significant investments in apprenticeship, and we've seen that across the state. And those seats are really being taken quickly. There's a lot of interest both in people, in workers in that growth pattern for themselves and for businesses to be able to bring people in at a level that is paid training and continuing to grow them. So we're seeing a lot of interest there. Obviously, Free Community College, I don't know if President Dagler is on or not, but there's a lot of opportunity that we're seeing for young people who left high school and maybe kind of were in a little bit of a holding pattern, that they saw an opportunity for themselves in this Free Community College. And we're seeing kind of real connection there for Maine's young people. A couple of pilot projects that we're working on. One of them is called Maine Career Exploration. Maine Career Exploration is a program that is in partnership with DOL and the Department of Education and JMG. And so we are all working together to create opportunities for Maine's high school juniors and seniors to have paid work experience. And it's a place where we're applying federal funds through Maine Jobs and Recovery to pay for the students' paid work experience. We recognize that their ability to provide really productive value into businesses for those first 40 to 75 hours is a little bit challenging. Some of these young people maybe have never worked. Some of this is about them seeing and learning more about what careers exist in Maine. And so it's a really good opportunity for businesses and nonprofits and communities to have young people in their organizations to learn what they do, to see what those opportunities are, and to help coach Maine's youth into the workforce as we move forward. We are doing paid work experience because the strategic plan focus group said if we want to be inclusive, if we want to make sure all students can take advantage of this opportunity, we need to make sure that they can be paid. Some of the feedback we're getting is young people can get a job now if they want one. And I think that's true. We're seeing a lot of young people work. Commissioner Fortman will tell you there are more requests for work permits than there have ever been. So I do think that that's true. Oftentimes, though, those aren't kind of career exploration opportunities. Those are, I need money to put gas in my car type opportunities. And so this is a chance to say, you don't need to stop doing that, but you can also pick up a few hours, learning at a doctor's office, learning, at Maine DOT, wherever you want to learn, and whatever you're interested in, there's an opportunity there too. I will say, if you have an organization that isn't posting jobs for Maine Jobs and Recovery and you're interested in getting young people into your organization, please let me know. We can connect you into that team. They can figure out how to make that happen, because there are over 2,000 students already enrolled in this program. Some of them have already started their work experience, some of them haven't, but they're looking for great opportunities across the state. And we really want to show them what Maine has in our economy so that they can find the spot that they're most interested in. So that's a really key program. We're excited about the pilot. We're open to your feedback about your experience, right? I think we'll have a range of experience. Some high school seniors are ready for some of these opportunities and will come in and learn and probably add a lot of value. Some students maybe are still in a more learning mode of, how do you get to work on time? What does it take to be a good participant? What ideas do they have and how do they communicate those ideas? I think there's a lot for both the employment community and the student community to learn throughout this process. So we are really looking forward to that. Somebody's asking about the best way to connect with the pilot. I'll drop an email in the chat in just a minute. I can't look up the email address and talk at the same time, but I'll do that in just a minute. Thank you for being interested and being willing to reach out to the team. And if you have JMG specialists in your school, the JMG team is also very engaged and has the opportunity to plug students in as well. So that's one thing. If you think about the strategic plan, workforce really comes in two places. There's grow our own talent, right? Maine Career Exploration would fall in that. Community college would fall into that. As you think about, there's a program for electricians. There are a variety of programs right now for Maine people that really kind of try to align create opportunities for people who want to develop skills in certain areas to do that so that they align to the jobs that are available. That's kind of growing our own talent, improving workforce participation. I will say though, and just this is one of these record-setting things, if you look at workforce participation in Maine in prime working age, our numbers are actually really pretty good. If you look at total that includes people over the age of 65, that's where we start to see some challenges. So while we need to improve our workforce participation, that's the grow our talent, right? Keep them here, give them opportunities, expand that work. The other lens of that is attracting talent to Maine. And for the first time over the last few years, we've actually turned that corner and had in-migration, which we hadn't seen. I remember my first year here sitting with the folks in Greenville, and they were talking about, the out-migration, concerns about keeping their schools, concerns about keeping their hospital, things like that. Now they're expanding their hospital. They have, graduating classes that are funneling in. So we're seeing some shifts there, not in every community, certainly, but in some, but it's not enough, right? As we think about the number of workers we'll need and the number of people we need in our communities, we still need to be thinking about that. So attracting talent is a big piece. As part of the strategic plan, you all weighed in on the Maine Opportunity Tax Credit. Senator Pouliot put a bill in, and the legislature and the governor worked together on streamlining that so that businesses and organizations could use the Maine Opportunity Tax Credit as a workforce attraction tool. It had been too complicated before for people to successfully say, yes, you will qualify. This is what you will get as a result. And so that streamlining was an expensive process because you have to grandfather people and open for new people. And so again, as part of the last couple of years, we've been able to make that transition so that organizations and businesses can use that tool to attract talent. The other interesting pilot, and this one doesn't have a name, so I just did this conversation with another group, and I got all kinds of ideas for names. We'll see if one of them sticks. But we are going to do a pilot for businesses, nonprofits, and communities that have open positions and want to go recruit from colleges across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. It will kind of mirror, if you think of our trade show program, for small businesses that want to go to larger trade shows, but really wouldn't have the capacity or the resources to have a large booth and be a part of that. We often do umbrella situations where we create a presence and then they can kind of plug into that, and we help support them financially to do that. We're going to do that in workforce attraction as well. And so we're going to open up a program that helps facilitate and helps partially fund small businesses and nonprofits and communities to go to colleges and high schools across the Northeast with clear roles so that you can attract people into those roles and then help streamline the back end process of them moving here. So it's a really tangible, there's a lot of discussion about a big marketing campaign. Let's talk to students about moving to Maine. We are evaluating that. Those are pretty expensive. Our ability to actually tangibly, one-on-one, attract people here and have businesses and nonprofits do that is significantly higher. And so we're going to start there, and that program will be available this spring. So we're excited to try that. Again, it's a pilot. We'll put a small amount of money in, do some testing, and figure out what works there. Those are just a couple of the new programs. As you think about what's next for us, it's really thinking about, again, workforce attraction. It's thinking about kind of rural opportunities that align to the rural community's interests. We've seen, right, what happens in Madison when all of the pieces can kind of come together and attract new manufacturing to a small community. Now people are building housing, restaurants are opening, the tax base is stabilizing, and they are hiring good jobs. So we're excited about those opportunities that exist across the state, and we hope to work on some of that as well. And obviously connectivity and cellular are big parts of our work too going forward. So I hope to see many of you next week. And Dana, thank you. I'll drop that email into the chat, but if there's anything else, Dana, I'm going to be on. I'm just not going to be on camera.
Okay. Are there any questions, or do you want to wait for questions? You can be with us through the program, Heather, or you have to leave?
I'll be with you just on not on screen.
Okay, so we can hold for some of the questions, but be thinking about it and enter it into the chat room, and we'll be sure that the commissioners get to hear it, what those are. Next up is the Commissioner of Transportation, Bruce Van Note. And Bruce, I was struck by a comment that you made on the positive side of things. Don't be worried about it. Is that when you said the money that was in the program with the matching opportunity that it gave the department, that we went from defense to offense. That's a very encouraging term. Why did you say that? What was the background to that?
Because things have changed in terms of funding, and the questions are different. First of all, Dana, thanks for being here. I just want to echo some thoughts of my fellow commissioners and Hannah and everybody else. We worked like a team, unlike anything I'd seen during the pandemic. Obviously, necessity was the mother of invention, and whether it was Gene or Heather, they'd call and say, "Can you do this?" And of course, you know, Dana, yeah, we can. You know, just how, and so we started doing things, but we had a little glitch. They wanted to hear from me, you know, that it was okay. And I remember writing this email that I've never written before. I say, consider a request from Commissioner Lambrou or Johnson as a directive from me. and you know what that does to this place. Let the trucks flow. And so it's just great to be part of this team. The reason I said that and struck a tone of overall optimism, Dana, and as people who know me, I'm not known for false optimism, right? I coined the phrase a few years ago of competently managing the slow decline of the system, because it was actually what we were doing at the time. But what has changed is they passed a federal bill, and the state has stepped up with some matching funds to go after that money. And I'll be hitting that, Dana, along with topics of some long-term planning that's wrapping up. The work plan that just got issued yesterday, by the way, our annual 3-year work plan just got published yesterday. And then I'll touch on a few kind of things that are different that we're working on that people might not know about. Traditional kind of little different for DOT, but it's still right in our wheelhouse. And then a couple challenges. So first, long-term planning. DOT is wrapping up a year-long effort on various long-term plans, including the long-term transportation plan and modal plans, a rail plan, a transit plan, an active transportation plan, an aviation plan. As you know, Dan, those usually get done at various times and not necessarily synced together all in one. The pandemic kind of bunched them all up together, and it turned out to be a happy accident. So about a year ago, we started working on all those, and they're all coming down new. The way to think of all these plans and documents is that the long range plan sets general direction in approach, you know, at the level of like, let's go west kind of direction. The modal plan set kind of more specific destinations, you know, let's go to this let's go here, here, here for all those various modes. The work plan is the triptych. This is charting the course. This is how we actually get there. And then budgets, of course, are the fuel. Without that, you can have the best triptychs in the world, but you're not going anywhere. So that's how all these things work together. All those plans are together, can be read in their entirety or with a 2-page summary on the main DOT website. Just look for family of plans, and they called that because they all happened together. Second, funding opportunities, and that's the reason for the change, and to, you know, playing defense. That's kind of MacGyver mode, taking care of what you got, you know, pave it, try to make it as smooth as you can, nothing big happening, try to hold things together. Now that's kind of defense. We now are continuing our shift from what I call making do to making progress, you know, and it's largely because of the federal bill. But it's not for the reasons a lot of people think. about the federal bill. Most people, I think I've made this analogy before, you may have heard it, that I think everybody thinks I'm sitting in a hot tub in my office with just $100 bills, just just everywhere, rolling in it. The bill provided critically needed one-time fund, critically needed reliable funding, formula funding, about a 30% increase. That's not chump change, as you know. That's serious money. That's about 70 million a year. That came on the heels, though, of construction inflation at 40 to 50% since 2018. So that money was just sucked up in trying to do what we've been doing. So that's not the game changer. The game changer is in the competitive discretionary grant programs under the bill. And those are different. They're not like reliable paycheck money. They're like bonus programs that you can earn. And to do that, you need good applications. And so we have shifted to the fundraising is year round now. We are writing project grant applications year round. Those have to be good projects. They have to be ready, both in terms of technical, you got to know what you're building, and public support. That's important. You're generally not going to win a discretionary grant or congressionally directed spending earmark unless things are pretty much cooked. And so early ideas that haven't been cooked, although exciting, generally are not winners on those things. So we have always done well in what I call that special federal funding, whether it's competitive grants or earmarks. And we're trying to maximize that. That's the policy of the state, to try to maximize that money to the state of Maine. To do that, of course, and that's counterintuitive, this hot tub with money kind of thing, is that to leverage the federal money, as you know, you almost always need state match. It's a great deal, by the way. You come up with one state dollar, you can leverage 4 federal dollars. There's not too many organizations, government or otherwise, that wouldn't take that deal. I mean, the 400% return on your money right out of the gate. But you need that initial dollar. And so the more federal money requires more state money. And the state highway fund is not the source for that. It has been largely flat. It has not been declining yet. That will eventually come as we transit, well, unless we, absent policy changes, that will come eventually with more and more EVs on the road, which is a good thing. On highway, but on the highway fund, it's just very flat. So Governor Mills and the legislature has stepped up with general fund. In the current biennium, between general fund transfers, cascade language, and bonding, it's averaged almost $200 million a year from the general fund, supported by the general fund. And looking forward, there are proposals in the current budget that get close to the same amount. Not all general fund, there's some revenue bonding in there, but so that's the key that unlocks the federal money. And that's why I'm saying, hey, we're not just playing defense. Let's start playing offense, because not only have the feds done something, but the state has stepped up too. And those two happening has been what's needed to unlock things. All that leads to a work plan, which was just issued yesterday. It's online if you want to see it. It's about, paper copies are kind of quaint for show now. It's all online. You can sort by municipality, you can sort by mode, you can sort by all kinds of things. This was originally generated, this is a 3-year work plan that we put out annually because things change. The first one of these 3-year work plans was done in 2013. So this is the 11th consecutive. It's a big deal. We spend months and months putting it together. I mean, we start as soon as the legislature leaves, generally, which, and it's a year like this is often the 1st of July, but we've had some bond sessions in August that don't get us going till Labor Day, because you got to know how much fuel you have to chart your course. And it was first done by the simple question that I would get from transportation committees or just people on the street. Why do you need so much money? And what do you do with it all? That seems like a big number. What are you doing with it all? Can you give me a list? And I said, well, I could give you a list, but I'm not sure you'd want the list. So we had to find a way to take 2,600 work items over 3 years that total $3.9 billion and get it in a consumable way that people could understand. And so that's what this work plan is, sortable by location, by mode. It covers everything. It is the primary way we achieve our mission, which hasn't changed, even though the opportunities have changed. It's to support economic opportunity and quality of life by responsibly providing our customers, very simple, the safest and most reliable transportation system possible, given available resources. What's changed is the given available resources, and what's possible has therefore changed. I won't bother to try to talk about projects. A reporter came and said, you put out your work plan. Can you tell me the most important project? And I said, well, there's literally hundreds and hundreds. And I think importance depends on give me a location and I can give you some highlights or something like that. They all feel like, our kids, and picking one over the other is tough to do. But just know that it invests in our foundational highway and bridge system, which, by the way, I know is something that doesn't get a lot of play right now, but 93% of the people that went to work today did it on a highway and a bridge. Now, sometimes they did it in a bus, and they're going to be doing it in electric cars, but still, that's a foundational system for a rural state like Maine. And we can't lose that fact, but we also invest in rail, transit, ferries, active transportation, all across the board. And we're excited about all of those things. In terms of initiatives that I've mentioned before, I think a year ago, but the bill allowed us to get there, is we are trying to invest in some villages and downtowns. Those are expensive projects that we can't do without special federal funding. But the bill allows us to compete for grants for that. They compete well because of the economic aspect, the business vibrancy, walking, pedestrians. I mean, it's good. It checks all the boxes, so it competes very well in Washington. So we got money for Sanford. We're going to be looking to try to help somebody in Wyndham. We have we put out planning partnership initiatives, kind of a call to municipalities, and we have a couple dozen that we're working, and we may only be able to do 1 or 2 a year, but those are important. You start putting dots on a map, and those do the kinds of things. Those are the kind of things that can lure people to live here. Portland, the standard thing is everybody comes to Portland for the food. They read about it. They come to Portland. They find out they can't get an apartment, so they go one ring out. And then they end up in other places. But then they go on a trip to Bridgeton, or they go on a trip to Kingfield, or they go on a trip down east. And if you have a village there, and with broadband, which is very important, and we're helping with that as well, providing support on that, they go, hey, this is something we might be able to live. So it's all part of that kind of in-migration strategy. And we're also putting a focus on you can't be doing these expensive projects on villages without making sure you can get there from here. And so a lot of rural, what I call MacGyver reconstruction, is we stepped up on that. Same kind of stuff like we did in Route 11 years ago up in the county, where it was just largely impassable, but we found a way for lower cost per mile for reinstituting that. So that's good. That's the work plan. That's a whole thing. And MaineDOT.gov has that. In terms of things that are a little different that we're working on, that's not always seen as DOT. And Hannah can help me with this because I work with her on a lot of stuff. Obviously, clean energy, climate is a big strategic part of what everybody's doing in state government, or everybody's doing broader nationally and internationally. That means EV charging stations. There's federal funding for that. We're working with Hannah's Shop and Efficiency Maine to make sure there's more of those. In the clean energy field, there's a real important project for clean pellets that'll be manufactured in Millinocket and exported through Mac Point and Searsport. The developers of that told us straight out that unless you do this grant, which we're applying for a grant for a $57 million project to allow that to go forward. That's the linchpin of that going forward, which is huge for that area and good for the port. And we're working on a wind port, floating offshore wind, leasing by the federal government is scheduled for the third quarter next year. If Maine wants to reap the opportunities of that, the only real way to do that is through a wind port. Otherwise, a lot of the jobs and work will be someplace else. And so we've been in an ongoing effort that's not yet completed. No site has been selected. It's been focused on the Port of Searsport. And that's an effort that's ongoing and very important to clean energy. And I already mentioned broadband. Before the Connectivity Authority was even existing, we gave a call to people that were working and we've actually provided some staff support because we knew all of different fields, similar work necessary. What's the need, map it, corridors, GIS, contracting, project management, all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of are still helping that effort because broadband electronic connection is just as important as physical connection now. So in terms of challenges, again, it's an exciting time to be in transportation. We're on offense, so I don't like focusing on negatives, but the challenges relate to managing some expectations. That belief of hot tub and money and everything for everybody now is, even though we can do more, it's still going to be measured, pragmatic progress. I mean, it's not going to be all modes everywhere all the time. It's just not. But there's a lot of excitement in the air, and managing those expectations is something that we'll do. Bill by bill, project by project. We're not negative, but we do the math. I mean, I was an engineer by original training, and I can't get over doing the math. How much is that going to cost for capital? How much is it going to cost for operations? How many people is it serving? Those basic questions are always going to be there, and sometimes when you do that, some ideas don't make it. The state and local funding, matching funding, really can't thank the governor enough and the legislature lately for stepping up. But that's a tough debate every time, right? Transportation in the Appropriations Committee room. What are you doing here? Well, we've been there for 9 consecutive years with $100 million bonds. And by the way, that just tracks a federal trend. 30 to 40% of all federal money for transportation is now general fund. It's not dedicated anymore. So that kind of tracking that trend. And then the last one challenge, it's something we can't control directly, is contractor capacity. We have to make sure that when we put stuff out, we're still getting value. And we're reaching close. It's close to capacity time. We're seeing the shifts that happen with the market. We're seeing a few more bidders. We're seeing contractors bid on some things they didn't before. That doesn't come easy. It's a transition, but we're starting to see it. But that's an issue that we always have to look out for to make sure we continue to get taxpayer value. So wrap up where we started. Thanks for the question. We are on offense. There's reason for optimism. There's stuff there's a way to get this done now. If we seize the day, provide some matching funds, go after the federal money, we can do stuff that we haven't done in a long time. And it's an honor and privilege to do this job for the governor and represent the 1,600 people at Maine DOT that actually do the work. Dana, you were talking about me, a tough day for me. It's a tough day for about 360 people in the plows. that's taking care of it. And they're day in, day out, year round, 2 a.m. And they're the people. If you ever want to take a ride, we can get you in one, by the way. And they'd love to do it because I'm very proud of all the teammates I work with. So thanks for the opportunity, Dan.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate it. As you already have noted, that there is a lot of important information, and we're very grateful to our commissioners and administrative leaders for doing just that. You probably have also noticed that we're nearing the end of the scheduled program. However, in the hopes that both Hannah and Bill can stay with us, I have every intention of continuing the program because the information both received as well as I know that lies ahead with our 2 remaining speakers are very important and things we want to hear about. So I saw the nodding of the head from both of you, and I appreciate that very much. I do not want to limit because there is much to be said and much for us to learn. So I'm going to turn to you, Hannah, as a lead on the Office of Policy and Innovation. You have been the leader on a number of very instrumental plans, be it climate action plan or the role in the strategic plan. And we'd like to also suggest that maybe there's room here for an energy plan. But in any event, we welcome you. We thank you for what you've been able to do to help our state and look forward to what you have to say.
Great. Well, thank you, Dana. And it's great to speak after Bruce and Heather and Jean, 3 folks who I work with all the time. And I will present quickly. I want to mostly share some of the progress that I think the Chamber has been a participant in. Lots of folks on your Zoom screen have participated in. And I want to share some acronyms and websites because I think it's important. I think we talk a lot about the transparency of government, the funds, these sort of really significant funds that we've been entrusted to spend. And we want to make sure that people in Maine, especially leaders in Maine, are familiar with what we're doing. So this is a slide with a lot of words on it, but my office has been lucky to work on a lot of important projects from Maine Jobs and Recovery to the state's climate plan, projects I won't talk about, but Jean hit on the Children's Cabinet, the new Cabinet on Aging, as well as Gordon Smith's work as the Director of Opioid Response. Obviously, lots of important work happening in this administration across all the agencies of state government, with lots of stakeholders, with business, with communities. So again, proud of the work that we're doing. Gotta just try to get to the next slide here. There we go. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of big projects that I think a lot of folks are aware of, but wanted to make sure you're following the progress. So Heather mentioned the economic plan, really still the framework for so much of the work of our state and the state legislature. We were taken slightly off course by the pandemic, and I saw some members out there of the Governor's Economic Recovery Committee. So in 2020, we had just adopted the state's economic plan, and we were hit with a pandemic, and we wanted to figure out how to keep that incredibly important economic plan on track. So the Governor's Economic Committee made some suggestions and really powerful recommendations about how to recover. I will say that really set the framework for the $1 billion of state funds that the state received from the American Rescue Plan Act that were then enacted by the state legislature in LD 1733 to become the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. So just this past fall, we celebrated 1 year of progress, and I will say that we were a leading state in the country to put those dollars to work. We were a leading state in terms of investments in our businesses and economic recovery, as well as our workforce. So again, I'm super proud of the work that really agencies all across state government have done to get these funds out. They're being spent. They're being spent in businesses. They are rebuilding infrastructure. You heard a little bit about that from Jean. So again, I won't go into the details of what's in the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, but I would encourage folks to go to the website. We have a dashboard, again, the radical transparency of all the investments made through every single program the state has put out. You can search by your town, you can search by your county, you can search by program. We have a great team working on this. And again, there are still funds to be spent. Heather didn't Didn't get into the deep details, but she works with FAME and MTI to continue to put out innovation funds. We still have opportunity there. Lots of work happening in sectors across the state. As a part of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, over $100 million invested in workforce. And I will just say again, I know it's a top tier issue for the governor as well as the chamber. We work with the Department of Labor, especially, and Heather Johnson and the Department of Economic and Community Development to really make sure that we are honing our strategies, working with our higher education institutions, and we are spending the dollars that we have as wisely as possible to solve what is really obviously a significant challenge for our state. Bruce mentioned Bill. We have all kinds of acronyms these days, MJRP, Bill. The bipartisan infrastructure law, obviously supported by our entire congressional delegation, has delivered unprecedented opportunity in transportation, in environmental protection and resilience, in rebuilding our energy infrastructure, as well as broadband. So we work on a coordination project to ensure that those funds, the governor wants to make sure that we are competing as successfully as possible. I won't spoil, but I will just say I just got another press release from Senator Collins and my mom's office about another $33 million going to the state ferry service and rebuilding a new ferry. So lots of good news about Maine's competition under Bill. And I will say many of these dollars are slated to go to communities. So we have been working with Maine Municipal and others to ensure that communities are aware of the transportation opportunities. There's actually a webinar today on broadband opportunities. So in each of these kind of big buckets of federal funds, we want to ensure that our towns, especially our small towns, have the support they need to apply. So Dana, just thank you to the chamber for really your work working on climate. Obviously, this is a issue that's hard to deny after, the pre-Christmas storm, and days like today, we are just seeing real acceleration in the challenges of climate, but obviously opportunities as well for action. I will just quickly tout that lots of folks, including Maine businesses, participated in Maine's first climate action plan in more than a decade. And we just this past year received a national award for the best climate plan in the country. So thanks to all those who participated. The climate plan has a variety of goals to reduce our emissions, to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, to deliver new plans every 4 years, and obviously to ensure that our economy, our communities, and people are ready for the impacts of climate. That's really a challenge we are struggling with, especially this winter. So lots of progress. We did put out a dashboard. Again, we love dashboards. This past December 1, the second anniversary of the state's climate plan, about how we're doing. And I encourage folks to follow our progress there. We are already starting the runway for the next climate action plan. We will 2024, which is now less than 2 years away, another climate action plan will be required. And again, we look forward to working with businesses and communities and schools and the legislature around how to ensure we are keeping up with the goals we set in law, as well as the opportunities. So the opportunity to double clean energy jobs, to weatherize our homes, especially obvious why reducing the amount of heating oil we need to consume is important. So lots of opportunity there, as well as lots of heritage job opportunity there. I'll just close by saying that the housing challenge is a major one that our office is working on. Greg Payne, as well as now Ryan Fecto, are really two of our leaders in our office working on this issue. And I know that I don't need to tell anybody about the challenge that we face. Obviously, an unprecedented shortage of housing for rentals and ownership for really people at most levels of income in many, many communities in Maine. Obviously, the challenges have accelerated. And we know that supply chain and workforce just make these things more challenging. I will just say, I think the state, with the support of the chamber, the legislature, we have made unprecedented investments in housing supply. The most significant investments that have ever been made were made in the last 4 years. Lots of units in production, lots of new opportunities through land use reforms being made in communities. But still, despite all this, there is so much more to be done. And I know that folks are probably aware that the legislature has created a new joint select committee on housing. lots of bills, ideas, investment suggestions being made. The governor did put another $30 million, which is really a first in the general fund, to put $30 million of general fund dollars into additional housing production. Major focus on those who are most challenged, our homeless population. Obviously, lots of communities in Maine, from Presque Isle to Portland, feeling those challenges, as well as continuing to work with our communities about how do we really solve this problem on a regional and local basis. So I will stop there and just really thank Dana, you and others for partnership on all of these issues. There's a ton of heavy lifting to be done in this legislative session. But I think that we're starting on the right foot. So look forward to continued progress.
Well, thank you, Hannah. To you and your team, it's remarkable the work that has been done. And we all know, whether you're in business and have a business plan or in government, you need that same path forward where priorities are set that are the most important, because dollars are never enough to do all the things that need to be done. So I commend you for what has been done and for the efforts to help us as we go forward, establishing a pathway in that regard. Thank you. Next up, and our final planned speaker, unless Commissioner Fortman joins us, will be Bill Harwood. About a year ago, in fact, I think it was the 1st of January, in which Bill left a very distinguished career in energy and utilities and joined the state as public advocate. Bill, I can only imagine that with all the issues out there in which your voice is expected, you must wake up every day saying, which one will I take on today? Because there are so many issues in energy and utilities. But tell us about that. Not so much in terms of which one you pick, but the areas, the challenges, the opportunities within your area of jurisdiction, if you will.
Thank you, Dana. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to your members. I really appreciate it. The chamber is an important part of the energy and utilities issues in Augusta, and we really value your contribution. I want to acknowledge Ben Lucas and the hard work that he does so often in the legislature and the PUC, and it's really a privilege to work with him on these issues. As most of you know, the Office of Public Advocate is a really small agency where there are 11 of us hardworking, dedicated employees who work every day to try and advocate for ratepayers. We advocate before the Public Utilities Commission. We're constantly trying to present to them the ratepayer perspective, the ratepayer impact of what the policy questions that they are deciding. And similarly before the legislature, and specifically the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, we want them to make the best possible decisions and have the most accurate and information about ratepayer impact of all of those bills that come before that committee. And finally, we work very hard on consumer education and outreach. We get over 100 calls from individual consumers a month to the office, and we have a program in which we try hard to get prompt information to those consumers so they can make good choices about their energy and utilities consumption. And that is a big part in terms of rising costs to some of these folks. The areas that we're going to be focusing on the next year are probably no surprise to you. The biggest area is the affordability. The question of how do we maintain and keep our utilities and our electricity, and specifically affordable to all ratepayers, specifically low-income ratepayers. That's a real challenge, as we've seen large increases. The standard offer prices have just gone up again on January 1st. Our standard offer prices, that's the default supply service that is provided, in a little over a year have gone from approximately 6 cents a kilowatt hour to 18 cents a kilowatt hour. That is a huge burden on all consumers, but particularly low income and a lot of small businesses, a lot of businesses who are struggling and don't have much ability to pass those cost increases on to their consumers. So we are very sensitive and working on that. Unfortunately, both CMP and Versant Power have before the Public Utilities Commission increases of approximately 30%. Those cases will be decided in the summer, but not before our office presents the best case we can for why those increases should be reduced and why not all of those increases are needed. So we've got a lot of work to do in those cases before the Public Utilities Commission. We need to do more work on our low-income financial assistance. We have programs in place that help low income with their utility. We don't want to see low-income Mainers have to choose between paying their utility bill and purchasing necessities like food and medicine. We need to have that electricity as a necessity, and that bill needs to be affordable for a low-income family or even a moderately income family to be placing $1,500 a year into their household budget to pay their electricity bill is a huge burden. And we need to find more resources to provide more financial assistance to those folks. And we need to continue to work on reforming the underlying drivers of that. On the supply side, we need to figure out a better system for standard offer service. This is something that we work on, the PUC works on. We need to stabilize those prices. Going from 6 cents to 18 cents is really hard. And while those prices may well come down when things settle down, the war in Ukraine and international energy prices stabilize, the up and down creates havoc for consumers, low income, fixed income, people to live paycheck to paycheck. We need to work on that. We also need to work on the retail supply side for residential customers. We are not convinced that the current system where 90% of the customers get their service from default standard offer and 10% get their service from competitive electricity providers is providing the value to the people of Maine. We will be having more to say on that shortly in terms of a new report coming out to the legislature, but it's ripe for discussion, more consumer protection to make sure that those folks out there who are selling those electrons and electricity are not taking advantage of unsophisticated or people who don't have the resources to make the best choice. We also need to continue to work on the terrific work that Hannah Pingree and her team have done, the leadership to get transition from fossil fuel to electricity. This is a big part of what's going on in the utilities and energy world. In the old days, we focused just on keeping the prices reasonable and keeping the lights on. Now we've got a third equally important mission, and that is to wean ourselves off of fossil fuel and to get on to renewables. The natural gas, we are at the mercy of international events such as the war in Ukraine, and it creates havoc for those consumers in Maine to see our electricity prices increase simply because we can't get reasonably priced natural gas in Maine. So we are working to improve that. We've also got to focus on getting ready for what is already started, but which will accelerate, and that is the electrification of home heating and transportation. Our electric grid was not designed for those additional requirements. We welcome that opportunity and we will get there, but it will take some time. And the most important thing is to do it in a thoughtful, smart way that doesn't impose any more costs than necessary on the utilities to be passed on to their ratepayers. There's a lot of work to be done. We need to make sure as we transition to renewables that we are getting the best possible deal from those renewables. We have a number of programs. You've undoubtedly heard about net metering and net energy billing. That is one of the more controversial programs that will continue to require work and focus to make sure that we're getting the most renewable power we can for our dollars. We want the renewable power, we need solar and wind, but we need to make sure that we're getting it at the best possible cost. And we also need to look at the bigger projects. We're still looking at whether the Hydro-Quebec transmission line will ever become a reality is an important part of getting us off of fossil fuel. We are working hard, making good progress with our friends in Massachusetts to get ready for the possibility of a major new transmission line from Aroostook County to bring large amounts of wind power down into southern Maine and, more importantly, southern New England, where there's an opportunity to displace fossil fuel. And finally, offshore wind, as you heard from others, is an important piece. We need to keep working on that and keep developing that, and hopefully at some point have a viable and robust offshore wind that is cost effective and competitive with alternative sources. So we've got a lot of work to do. And finally, all of this work and all of this controversy will be done between now and Election Day next November under the cloud of the public power referendum. Both CMP and Versant Power will be working hard to convince the voters that they should be given a continued opportunity to serve. Others will be pushing hard for a public power acquisition of their assets. Our office will be trying to make sure that when we're called on, voters will have good information, reliable information, accurate information to make that best possible choice next November. But it will be in the background and of all of our debate in energy and utilities over the next 10 months. I don't want to keep anyone as the last speaker. I want to keep it short. I don't want to keep you from going out and trying to shovel water out of your driveway or whatever you've got planned for the rest of your morning. So I will pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions. And Dana, thank you again for this opportunity.
Oh, the privilege is ours, to be sure. And I know that we've gone over the scheduled hour, but you know why? Because you, as an audience, have been the recipient of some very great information by a great team. So we thank you all. We do have, I don't believe Commissioner Portman has joined us. I see no evidence of that. If somebody can tell me if she has, I don't want to overlook her for sure. But I would open it up for anyone that has, we've got time, possibly room as well for a couple of questions. If anybody has something that's burning on their mind that they want to ask of our remaining administrative leaders, please do so. I see nothing in the chat that hasn't already been addressed.
Dana, Robin Mullins has a question.
Okay, please. Robin, you're on mute.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great. So I don't really have a question. I just want to thank the commissioners for their time this morning. It's interesting. I'm the president and CEO of the Sebago Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce. And as I listen to you folks, obviously these issues are things that trickle down into the Sebago Lakes region and things that I'm asked to either deal with or try to help folks deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's really great to hear that you folks are working on this. And Bruce, the town of Wyndham, I have my businesses all over me about what's going to happen with the Department of Transportation and the changes going on there. So very, very much aware of that. So I just want to remind you folks that we chamber executives are here and to utilize us as resources, because we do have a really good pulse on what's going on in our areas, and we are more than happy to help out in any way that we can. Hannah, as I explained to you, we have our own 501c3 that deals with food insecurity in our region. So whatever we can do to help, I just want to let you know that we are definitely here.
Robin, those are very fitting words, and perhaps taking a clue for words of appreciation. Let me thank all who stayed with us during this program. Like I said, I know why you did, because the information is extremely valuable. It has been very impressive, and we are very appreciative. Please know that for all of the commissioners, whether you're still with us here today or not, please know how much we really appreciate what you do, but also how you do it, your accessibility and your willingness to work with all of us. You definitely, in everything you do, show that team spirit, and that too is very impressive. So to all of you, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing most of you at the Leadership Summit. And don't let snow hesitate your being there, because we know how to deal with snow in Maine. Thanks. Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.